Hello everybody, welcome back to the next episode of Bullet Point Fitness, right here with me, Nick, and today we're talking about something that was inspired by, you know, those reels that you see on Instagram or short form content that you see on social media, and it's some jacked up, roided up bloody teenager pointing at whatever body part, and the caption on the screen is, "Do this for best results with biceps." That is what has inspired today's episode. Now, first proper episode of the year, I figured it would be prudent to begin with a PSA. That's a public service announcement, in case you don't know. And that is basically to say, there is no such thing as a best exercise for anything, right? And I'm going to explain today why that is the case. Very easy for these quote-unquote influencers to find a new movement that they get along with very well, that has maybe even given them fantastic results hitherto unexperienced by them, right? And then take that movement and go bonkers about it on social media in front of everyone and tell them it's the best thing since sliced bread. And it may well be for them. And that is exactly the point here. From one person to the next, there is nuance. And that nuance is broken up into two halves here, okay? And if you take anything away from today's episode, I need you to remember these two things. The first of which is a little something called stretch-mediated hypertrophy, and the second of which is muscle insertion points. So, these two things vary on a scale from one person to the next. Now, to be clear, when I say there is no singular best exercise for any muscle group, I bloody mean it. This means I do not believe that the bench press is the absolute best thing for chest. I do not believe, this one's going to set them off, I do not believe that hip thrust is the absolute best thing for your butt muscles, for your glutes, primarily because it offers no stretch-mediated hypertrophy whatsoever. So let's get into that first. Showing stretch-mediated hypertrophy, in case you don't know, is reaching wherever you can between reps during a set for a stretch. And it's widely agreed in the scientific literature that if you are able to extract, to farm stretches during your sets in any movement, then this is generally extra fatigue, extra impetus for fiber tearing, and thereby good news anabolically. It is a contributing factor to growth. So an example of this would be if you were doing the bench press, go back to that example, if you took the bar down to your chest and your hands were positioned widely enough on the bar and your elbows were positioned properly in that lowering of the bar, then you could take it to around just hovering over your sternum and with any luck find yourself a fairly decent stretch on either side of your pecs. Happy days. Or in the case of lat pull down, pull the bar down, do the lat pull down, and then release it slowly, controlled, all the way up till you're stretching, and your lats are stretching before contracting your way back out of there, coming back down. Now, in my opinion, anyone who is training, who is looking to build muscle, should absolutely be putting the pursuit of this at the forefront of anything they choose to lift. Now, if you want to do hip thrust, which doesn't offer any stretch-mediated hypertrophy, and as do many other movements not offer stretch-mediated hypertrophy, that's absolutely cool, that's absolutely fine, but just be aware that accessing that stretch is going to pay dividends if you really put that stretch as a priority. That will then impact the weights that you choose. A lot of the ego lifter gym bros out there, you know, if they learned this piece of information and tried to apply it with the weights that they're currently messing around with, they're probably going to have a bad time. They might even tear muscles off the bone aiming for that stretch because they've been ego lifting weights that are too heavy for them, right? So another good thing about stretch mediated hypertrophy is that it humbles you and it forces you to go back to school on your form and put your ego back to bed and get back to weights that you can control and stretch through safely and confidently. So that's the first half, that's stretch-mediated hypertrophy. The other thing was genetic muscle insertion points. And everyone has a different muscle insertion point at a different length along the limb. Knowing this alone can be extremely informative. So what I'd like you to do right now, if you're watching or if you're listening, is take an arm, boosh, and give yourself a nice big old bicep flex right there. All right. Now, again, if you're watching, if you're listening, not so much, but if you're watching, you can see my bicep ends quite far up the limb, annoyingly. I'll get onto why that's annoying in a little bit, but it ends quite far up the limb. And you could look at the next guy and you'll see that his bicep ends right the way down into the depths of the elbow. And the reason it's annoying for me is, you know, when you look at people talking about bodybuilding, maybe bodybuilding judges or commentators who are on the scene and things like that, and they say, oh, he's got fantastic genetics for bodybuilding. Among other things, one of the primary things they're talking about is the bodybuilder's symmetry and muscle insertion points. If you look at Arnold Schwarzenegger doing a bicep pose, you will see that his bicep is very full. It disappears into the pit of his elbow. Happy days, great genetics, gonna score really well in bodybuilding. Look how that went for him. So for me, the revelation of having high insertion points was quite liberating. It was closure, and it allowed me to move on from quite a few things. It allowed me to move on from a desire to get on the stage and compete in bodybuilding. It allowed me to say to myself, well, that's probably never going to happen now. And there's nothing I can do about it because these are the genetic cards that I have been dealt. These muscle insertion points cannot be lengthened, by the way, in case you were wondering. And it also gave me a little bit of closure, not complete closure because that's impossible, but a little bit of closure with body dysmorphia. And so you, the listener, should be able to do this little bicep test now and identify to yourself whether you have long or short insertion points. As much as, for me, it kind of sucks understanding these blueprint facts about my body, leading to outcomes that maybe I don't want, I'm hoping that giving you this information will also be as much a Pyrrhic victory for you as it was for me. Realization, a closer alignment with reality, and on the dysmorphia front takes you away from being on cloud nine and pretending like one day you're going to look like Chris Hemsworth. You are you, and he is him. You each have your own blueprints, right? And that blueprint is all about those muscle insertion points. And those muscle insertion points are going to define what your physique will look like compared to the next guy who has worked just as hard for just the same amount of time. So if you have a physique now and you're not looking like whoever you had in your head, or if you have yet to have a physique, please, 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 please understand, you're going to look like you and no one else. And that's a fact. So, taking these two things into consideration, stretch-mediated hypertrophy, largely dictated by where the muscle inserts on the bone. Now, we could have a reversal of fortune here, and we could say, for me, because the muscle inserts so high up the bone, it's very easy for me to achieve tension and stretch. It will be harder for people with longer insertion points to find that stretch in certain movements. And now we're circling back to what I said right at the start here. And that was the concept of nuance, the concept of one person to the next. And so if you're listening to this today, you may find that you have trained with other people in the past and they've said, oh, do this thing, do this movement. I've tried it, it feels amazing. I love it. It's the best thing since sliced bread. And then you'll kind of begrudgingly gaslight yourself into doing the same movement because it's got all this reputation, but secretly in your own mind you've always thought to yourself, nah, it's all right, I suppose. And this is why. Your experience of the movement is very much different to the next guy's. Maybe you've got different insertion points. Maybe you're in a room with 5 people saying this thing's amazing, and those 5 other people, you're the 6th. 5 other people all have very similar insertion points and therefore a similar experience of a particular movement, and you're the one anomaly with different insertion points, and so the movement will feel very different to you. Wrapping everything up all together, please do remember you are a unique individual. I think, I can't remember the name of the character. Tyler Durden on Fight Club. He would emphatically disagree with me when I say, actually, you are a unique and beautiful snowflake. And when you take the nuances of that, what that means to you, into consideration, then you can be a lot smarter about your training. You can make exercise selections that are suitable for you as an individual, not exercise selections that some influencer thinks is fantastic or that your friends thinks is fantastic. Learn to listen to your body. If you think a movement is kind of meh, or you've been doing it for ages and you're not getting growth that you want there, bloody well do something else. PTs and coaches, if you are listening, prime example, if you are looking for low-hanging fruit here, I'll throw out a double bicep curl, right, with a client, and you're getting your client to straighten the arm out completely, and you say to them, can you feel a good stretch in your bicep there? You want to aim for that between your reps? And they say, no, not really, and you weren't expecting that, then you get to look like a numpty, right? Because you made an assumption about how they felt through a movement. You've also learned that, shock horror, they don't have the same body as you. And the solution here is just to extend the range of motion. Push deeper, find that stretch. In the case of the double bicep curl, stick them on an incline bench and let them do some incline bench single arm curls. Let their arms hang. Give them a chance to really stretch. Find that stretch, feel the stretch and the contraction. The two together will lead to gains. Grab them while they're going, guys. So there you go. There is your public service announcement. You are you, and they are them. Train accordingly. And I think I will leave it at that. Video-wise, I'm mindful that I look like one of those weirdos on YouTube that only has 20 views and 1 like right now. I'm using my phone. Using a little Bluetooth thingy. The lighting isn't amazing. I know all of these things, guys, okay? I know. And each of those little bits will get fixed one by one in time. Alright? So, No Chris Williamson, Joe Rogan, high production value shit going on here. Yet. Social media wise as well, I just want to throw it out there. I know I'm dragging out the ending to this episode, but I will throw it out there super quickly. I've only got the bloody mental capacity for one social media at a time. I don't want to rot my brain too much. And so you will find me on Threads. If you're listening in the UK, you're probably thinking, what the hell is Threads? It's basically Instagram morphing into Twitter. And it's actually really good. I'm really enjoying it there. So, yeah, get involved over there. Find me on there, Bullet Point Fitness. Already got a jolly good community over there. Come and get involved in the polls, in the posts. And I will speak to you guys in the next one. Take it easy.